Welcome to Comic Books and Chill, the home of the Stash Bros. I'm Mike, chilling with Chris.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to our show. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy some more comic book content.
And we got Jack DeMayo. What up, Jack?
Jack!
Yo, what's going on? I'm pumped to be here. We're talking about iconic things today.
Yes, we are, sir. And let's just dive in, Jack. So back in June, we asked you if you could pick up any two books by Frank Miller or Jim Lee to get signed. Which would you choose? For Jim Lee, you picked Batman 608 second print and X-Men #1. Two fabulous choices. Today, we brought you here today to talk about X-Men #1. And so just for all the people that don't know, break down the significance of X-Men #1 for us.
X-Men #1, released in 1991, is one of the most iconic comic books of all time. I mean, first off, you're talking about the sales record. 8 million copies sold, a number that doesn't even seem real by today's standards. If a book sells 100,000 copies, it's the equivalent of going like music platinum in today's market. Back then, you saw books that would sell 1 million. That would occasionally happen. You had that certainly with Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man, with Rob Liefeld's X-Force. But the king of all sales kings is X-Men #1 by Jim Lee. People were ready for a new X-Men. Uncanny X-Men had been a big hit series with Chris Claremont. People were ready for something new. Jim Lee brought a different flavor to it. On top of which, you got an introduction of some new characters. We got like Omega Red right off the bat in the first arc. Certainly was like a fan favorite character. And then really kind of ahead of his time. And this is why Jim Lee is so important and so significant. He's a trailblazer. We wouldn't have so much of what we have in modern comics today if it wasn't for Jim Lee. He really ushered in the variant cover with this 5-cover system that really made collectors say, I need all those covers.
The top-selling comic book of all time. What do you think Jim Lee's significance over the X-Men mythos in general?
For sure. To me, he absolutely is. Now, I admit I'm biased because I grew up in the Jim Lee era. Like, I came in probably at the tail end of Claremont. As a kid, got introduced to Claremont stuff. Then Jim Lee launched. Now, when you're buying Claremont books and you're a kid at my age, you're buying issues 200 in this, 200 in that. It's harder to feel as connected. That #1 that came out from X-Men made you feel like you got a chance to get in on the ground floor. You got a chance to start up. It wasn't about speculating or investing for me. It was about getting in there and feeling like you were in the know, like you were in the club. You were getting to see this from the ground up. You also were already starting to become familiar with Jim Lee because he was starting to like really kill it on covers and things like that. He's a master of the pencil and ink, really old school, but with like new school vibes. I've really melds the two very well together. So like getting that book, that's one of those like iconic books that for people nostalgia from a certain era, they're going to want that book. And I know that there's people who came up in other eras who don't see that significance of that book and maybe even don't like that book for this era in which it symbolizes, because it's really the poster child of that early 90s kind of gluttony, that heavy speculation that really like hurt the business. But at the same point, to me, I look back on it and it's everything like that shows comics potential, the universal mass appeal, and the fact that we can really cross over to pop culture. Because there was a moment in time when Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane, these guys were legit rock stars in America.
Yes, they were.
Straight up Liefeld on Levi commercials. I remember that. All right. The top-selling comic book of all time, and artist Jim Lee just recently sold all 4 covers for an undisclosed amount. What did you initially think when you heard the news that Jim Lee was moving these historic covers?
First off, a few different things. First thing, I was honestly stunned he owned them. Because if you look at the art of that time, they're the famous The Image documentary, The Image Revolution. They talk about Todd McFarlane and the fact that like his iconic Spider-Man 1 cover got auctioned off by Marvel and he didn't get any money from that. I know a lot of the original art at that time had to be turned into the offices, and then you did not retain ownership over that art. Original art has become a major revenue stream, and sometimes the largest, especially for like real traditional pencil and ink artists. They will do, you know, like in today's world, the world of exclusive variant covers, they'll do a variant cover pretty inexpensive, like $300 to $500. And the reason they do that is because they know they're going to make their bulk of their money off that original art. So when I first saw it, my first thought was, well, I can't believe Jim Lee owns this. I would have thought Marvel would have retained ownership. I don't know how, if he had some sort of agreement with them, if he acquired it later. I would love to know like the full origin story. I was amazed that he not only did he still have it, but that it hadn't come to auction yet, because so many iconic pieces have come to auction. And then I was really curious, like, what about now says this is the time? Certainly the market's red hot, but certainly it's so hot that your thought is this can only climb. So it's so interesting to me. At the same point, I was immediately disappointed that this wasn't going to be like a live bidding situation, so we couldn't really monitor this, because the curiosity in me just would love to know, like, how many people were bidding, what were the bids going for, were there some names that we recognize, but
nice.
They kept it private and kind of quiet.
What were your initial thoughts when you found out they weren't going to reveal the selling price?
I think that's what told me that this is going to go for something really nasty. That this is not, I don't know that that's the way this would have been handled if this was, say, a six-figure book or a six-figure piece of art. I'm not so sure that's the way we would have handled it if it was a barely seven-figure piece of art. I think the thing that people have to remember is it's 5 pieces of art. It's not one piece, and I think that largely changes things. When we're comparing it to first covers, we're often comparing, even I did when we were talking before we got on air, I compared it to another piece of work and tried to like gauge value. But again, you're looking at a single cover versus a series of covers. The fact that he not only retained the ownership of the original covers, but that he retained all of them, and that he's kept them all together, because that would be another tempting thing, is to break them up piece by piece. You can sell this cover, bring in this money. But he has kept this together as a set, and then to put it out for one collector to buy it all, you got to imagine there's a staggering price. And it's disappointing we didn't get to kind of see it through the process, which is why certainly people freaked out at some of the fake memes that we've seen over the last days about the sale.
I want to piggyback off the non-disclosure part of it, and the fact that you think that it was a nasty price it sold for. And of course it's going to be a nasty price, because the elephant in the room, Chris, who facilitated this? Torpedo Comics.
Oh.
And Torpedo is, to me, they're synonymous with expensive. Okay, so once we found out that Albert Moy wasn't facilitating this, because that's usually the person who handles Jim Lee's artwork, and it went to Torpedo, I was like, oh my God, this is gonna sell for millions. And so, but I thought, and you hit it on the head. I was really disappointed as well they didn't disclose the price because of all the hype. It's like, don't hype it up. Make it a secret auction amongst the Billionaires Boys Club or something, if you're going to keep it on the down low as far as like what's the price, because now the fans got involved and we want to know. We're part of it too. So I just didn't like it.
We certainly saw the meme go around of Nicolas Cage and 5.3 million. Now Nicolas Cage did not buy it. That's already been confirmed. Having said that, I believe the price would probably be pretty accurate for what we're looking at. Some of these iconic covers have gone for just about $1 million in original art. We're starting to see comics themselves go above $1 million. We certainly saw that with the Batman #1 from the recent Ken Golden auction, the sports card auction house. They just did 1.5 million on a Batman #1. So we're starting to get to that point, right, where sports cards got to, where 7 figures is a real thing. For this number of covers, I really think 5 million is probably a reasonable thought within there. I would certainly say I would imagine above 3, but that's really my thought. I think that keeping it private is a few things. It allows the buyer to kind of remain anonymous, but I think what it really does is it allows the buyer to make an investment play. So the buyer's able to buy this piece, remarket it in a couple of years without anyone knowing what they bought in at, what their profit level is. If they make 3x, no one's going to know. If they only make 1.2x, nobody's going to know. It really allows some autonomy there. Certainly not fun for the rest of us who would love to have a piece of this. But I will say to the Torpedo effect, I think we're going to have to pay attention to this because word on the street is Torpedo's getting in the original art game very heavy. artist representation. So I think you're going to see a lot more of this. Apparently, this is not the last big Jim Lee piece we're going to see from them. There's supposedly another piece coming that's going to shock people. And I think and this is just I have no inside knowledge. I think it's going to be that other one we talked about. I think we're going to get a little Batman and Superman action. If we're talking iconic pieces, Jim Lee in my mind, that's where my brain goes right off the bat. So, you know, supposedly there's another iconic Jim Lee piece coming.
Chris, how much you think it's sold for?
I had a like 2.5 to 4.1 range. I was thinking, honestly, my fiscal self, I was like, oh, 250 per, like 250,000 per page, but no, in reality, no, 2.1 million to like 4 million seems about right. Around $1 million each seems something like that. Honestly, these are iconic as heck.
I'm going to say it was an auction. So it was an auction. So people had a chance to throw money at the situation, right? And so whatever they felt comfortable with buying. And so, and also with auction, sometimes you got to throw out a little bit more so you can insure the bag, right? And so I think that it sold for like 7 to 8 mil because someone had to lay down a gavel and was like, not on my watch, homie.
Right.
And you can't be dilly-dallying like you're on eBay with little nickel and dimes when you're trying to get baller material, you know? So I'm going to say around 7 to 8 million, but it sucks that they did not say anything about it. But hold on. Here's the other question. This is the real question of why you're here, Jack. Why do you think he cashed out now? To me, I think that these covers will appreciate because it's a Guinness Book of World Record thing that it's like the champion of all covers. So, like, why did he sell now?
It's a very good question. Now, you have to first put out the caveat of we don't know Jim Lee's personal life, right? So that always comes into it. You don't know, and I hate to put this voodoo on him, but you don't know if he's sitting there, you know, with looking at a difficult mortgage or, you know, some financial thing that he did went bust. You don't know that. So this could be a necessary thing. It feels like that it's the right time for him. That I think that he's probably looked at doing this for a number of years and things lined up with the relationship with Torpedo and Torpedo entering this business. But at the same point, I am in total agreement with you, Mike, that this feels like a piece. Original art is really becoming more and more mainstream. You're starting to get wealthy comic collectors. And I've talked to a couple with my day job who it's funny for guys like us who love comics, and there's so many books that all of us, I'm sure, can't afford and would love to obtain, right? So we'll never be like tapped out. But there is actually a level of collector that gets bored with comic book collecting because they can afford every single book. There's a collector that I know who bought like $1 million first appearance of Wonder Woman. And then after he bought that was like, I don't know what to do with myself now because I own everything I would have wanted. The natural progression for those people is original art because it's a one of one. And so you start talking about these people who have the finances to be able to do whatever they want, entering into a space where there's only one of an item and then there's a competition element between them. So it's a really fascinating thing that's happening. So Jim Lee may have picked up on that motion, that is happening, that people are looking for that stuff. Also, again, people might have asked him, hey, do you own that? You know, he might have known that if he put this on the block right now, it would get a price. Certainly, I agree with you, though. If he held on to it, if he even just what he should have done, I can't say what he should have done, but what I probably would have done is I would have showcased it because I didn't even realize that he owned it. Showcase it first, get people talking about it, and then release it. But certainly, the viral video they did with the spilled chili on the fake copy of the Magneto cover certainly got them a lot of attention. It got them some mainstream attention. TMZ picked it up, things like that. So like, that's the kind of stuff that, you know, they kind of did. That's a little unconventional of the original art world, but it seemed to work.
It was cool, but I thought because you did that and it was a big gag and everyone loved it. I loved it. I laughed. But then we were left unfulfilled with the price tag at the end. It's like, okay, you want to market this and then you don't want to share how much it sold for. I thought that was kind of lame because it's like, okay, all these eyeballs are on the situation now. And so now we want to see the conclusion. And we were left hanging. And I just thought that was whack.
Mm-hmm.
No, that'll be interesting to see as this kind of like progresses, whether was that a torpedo call or that might have just been a Jim Lee call. Jim Lee might not have wanted that out there. Because I agree with you, like, certainly you referenced Golden Auctions earlier. Like, that's how they market themselves, right? They put that graphic up with a big sticker of this sold for $1.497 million only at Golden. Then that's what they're really marketing is you'll get top dollar at our auction house. So I'm surprised we didn't see something like that.
All right, so you alluded to it earlier, Jack, and this is another roundtable question. I'm going to start with you, and then Chris, you follow up. What is the next big money cover from the 90s that will give X-Men #1 a run for its money?
I think the 90s, though, is really what's going to drive the pricing today. I think that's what people are going to want. I think that's what's going to get the market's attention. You're going to get a more mass appeal from a character like Venom, and from a character like Deadpool. You're going to get a younger and an older audience that has money. And I think that we could start, especially if we start to see some of these prices get publicized, this can become a market that just expands. I mean, look at the crypto world and NFT world, what people are paying for crypto punks and Bored Ape. If you're not familiar and watching this, people are paying 7 figures, 8 figures for digital pixel art based on scarcity and demand. And what is more scarce than a one-of-one original art comic book that went on to produce a iconic collectible? So the opportunity to own a one-of-one version of something that everybody's familiar with, everybody chases. People are happy enough to get their hands on the New Mutants 98, right, let alone that original art. I think that's going to be big. And then, of course, those other launches, the X-Men, the X-Force 1 cover, the Spider-Man #1 from McFarlane. What's up with Spawn #1? Where is that? That's one that I think about. There are things like that I just wonder, will they see the light? I have to imagine after Todd McFarlane's experience with Marvel, he kept a tight reins on all his original art going on to Image.
Chris, what you picking?
I definitely got to agree with New Mutants 98. Obviously, Deadpool's super iconic right now, and if that were to hit market, people would go bananas for it. I also think the first Cable cover, number 87, I want to say, that's a big book. That's already a $200 book just by itself. I can't imagine what the original art would go for. I definitely agree. Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man #1 would be, honestly, probably the first. There's several iconic covers that, if they came to auction, would be super priced, especially the number 6 or 8, the one where he's kind of like the Spawn crouch.
Yeah, number 8.
That's an iconic cover. Honestly, I say those, and then probably some more of the X-Men titles, Jim Lee covers. Honestly, that X-Men #4, that book is huge. And if anything, I think some right before he left the X-Men title, like the X-Men 268. His iconic Captain America and Black Widow cover, I think it's like 88, but it's almost 90. So that's right around there. I think all of the Jim Lee covers overall, if they hit auction, are going to be money all day.
Right, I agree. Jack, you hit it on the head with my selection. And if this cover gets sold, I think it's a sign of doom. And that is Spawn #1. I think Spawn #1, if that was to go on the auction, that will be the hottest cover that will give X-Men #1 a run for its money, because it's the first ever Image comic cover, right? So Spawn #1 is the first Image release. Todd McFarlane is just as popular as Jim Lee, and in some ways more popular when you start getting into the toy realm and all of that stuff. I mean, even as a sports fan, the McFarlane sports picks and all of that stuff. So Todd McFarlane is the mogul of all moguls when it comes to the comic book realm. And the reason why I say it's a sign of doom, because Spawn is his baby. If Todd McFarlane moved that, something bad is happening. He's going broke, or the comic book industry is about to go upside down. Now, I could see like one of his kids or something selling that, but Todd McFarlane himself, I would go on a limb and say he would never in a million years sell that Spawn #1 cover. But if it does, I guarantee you he's going to find how much that X-Men #1 sold for and double it, because that's the way he thinks.
I have no doubt about that. And I think it's important to remember when we're talking about these prices, like we're talking about a major windfall of money. And it would be hard. Jim Lee's probably made a great living for himself over the last 20 years. Having said that, if he's looking at $5 to $8 million, that's money that anyone can do something with in today's market. He's got kids. He's got a pretty young family. I would imagine, that's probably some of that motivating factor. Like, I can do more with this money at this point. But certainly I agree with you. I'm never a doomsday guy, right? I'm always like, the market is positive. The market's moving up. This medium is pop culture now. It's no longer a fringe nerd thing. We're in the mainstream, and that's what's really scary for me is what if we continue to push to the mainstream, and what will these original art prices start hitting if some of these pieces start getting recognized by, say, Sotheby's or Christie's and places like that? It's scary.
Super scary.
Wow. Hey, Jack, before we let you go, please tell the Stash fam why they should be copping books on Whatnot.
Let me tell you something. Whatnot is an absolute enjoyable buyer and seller experience. For the buyers out there, you get an opportunity to see the book, not just a scan, not somebody's cell phone picture, right? You are watching live video. You want to see the left corner? You can just put that in the chat, no lag. They're going to be able to show you that left corner. You're going to be able to buy from people that you trust, people that you know, YouTubers, people on social media, the Stash Bros themselves. So if there's somebody that you connect with and you want to shop with and you trust, you're able to do that. On top of which, you're getting a live selling experience. You're getting the interaction. You're getting the entertainment and enjoyment from that, as well as some of the lowest shipping rates and the most trusted sellers out there. So I really think we're moving past an era of just scanning down listings, looking at tiny pictures, and people want more. So Whatnot is providing a fun and interactive experience, on top of which the industry is coming to Whatnot. Torpedo Comics, you mentioned them. They are on Whatnot. We have several creators. Jim Lee, you are on my list. We want Jim Lee on Whatnot, but it's just a matter of time. So it's definitely a new and growing buyer experience that I think I would encourage anyone to check out.
So check us out there on Whatnot. Jack, as always, much love. I got to give you a heads up. The next time we see you, be ready for a very, very serious slab discussion. I mean, serious. Okay. We're about to get into the core of your philosophy, all right?
Let's do it. I'm excited now.
Buckle your seatbelts, man. I've been planning this for about a month, so stay tuned. Well, that's all for our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe and hit that like button. We are the Stash Bros. I'm Mike, speaking for Chris and Mr. Bolo. We are out.